So let me tell you about the night I almost didn't go. The night I stood in a room full of people who thought I didn't belong there, and walked out knowing none of them would ever forget my name. It started in the most ordinary way possible. My wife, Emily, came home on a Thursday evening looking exhausted, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind. The kind where you drop your bag by the door and just stand there for a second before moving again. She slipped off her shoes and said, "The company gala is next Saturday. They want spouses to come." She didn't look at me when she said it, just walked into the kitchen like it wasn't important. I leaned against the counter and asked, "Do you want me to come?" She paused. Then she gave me a small smile. "Yeah, I do. Now you need to understand something about Emily." She had spent the last 4 years building herself from the ground up at one of the biggest real estate development firms in the city. The kind of company that buys old buildings, tears them down, and puts up glass towers with their name on the front. She started as an assistant. 4 years later, she was leading small projects on her own. She worked late more nights than I can count, missed dinners, canceled weekends, took calls during vacations. Not because she had to, but because she cared. She believed in earning her place. And she talked about her boss, Mr. Whitmore, like he was some kind of legend. Whitmore closed a $200 million deal in a week. Whitmore can read a contract in 10 minutes. Whitmore doesn't trust easily. I heard that name so often it felt like he lived in our house. But I had never met him, not once. And apparently this gala was going to be my introduction. Now before we go any further, I need to explain something about me, because it matters. I don't look impressive, I don't wear designer suits, I don't drive anything flashy, I don't talk loudly in rooms, I don't interrupt people, I don't try to be noticed. Most people assume I work in it. Or maybe accounting, or something stable. Emily once joked that I look like the guy who fixes the Wi-Fi when it goes out. I laughed, because I like it that way. I've learned something over the years. If you let people underestimate you, they show you exactly who they are. So Saturday came. I put on a simple dark suit. Clean lines, nothing fancy. No watch that screams money. No polished speech prepared in my head, just me. The event was at the top floor of a newly finished high-rise downtown, one of their projects, floor-to-ceiling windows. City lights everywhere. Soft jazz playing near the bar. Servers walking around with champagne like it was water. And the people, you could tell immediately who belonged. Tailored suits. Confident laughter. Strong handshakes. The kind of conversations where people don't really listen, they just wait for their turn to talk. Emily squeezed my hand before we walked in. "Just stay near me at first," she said quietly. I smiled. "Always." Within 5 minutes, she was pulled into a group conversation about a new waterfront project. Someone hugged her. Another person complimented her presentation from the week before. She was glowing, and I was proud. I grabbed a drink and stepped slightly to the side, not hiding, just observing. I like watching rooms. You learn a lot that way: who interrupts, who flatters, who dominates, who pretends, who feels insecure, who actually listens. That's when I saw him, Mr. Whitmore. He wasn't hard to spot. Tall, perfect posture. Expensive suit that fit like it was made for him alone, a voice that carried without shouting. People leaned toward him when he spoke. He laughed in a way that made others laugh too, even when they didn't fully hear the joke. He moved like the building belonged to him. And maybe, in a way, it did. His eyes scanned the room slowly. Confident, measuring, then they stopped on me. I was standing alone near the window. Simple suit. No group around me, no big gestures, just quiet. And I saw it. That quick calculation people make. The silent question, who is this guy? And whatever answer he came up with, it clearly wasn't impressive. A few minutes later, Emily spotted him and gently pulled me over. "Mr. Whitmore," she said brightly, "this is my husband, Daniel." She looked proud when she said it. That mattered to me. Whitmore turned toward me with a practiced smile, firm handshake. Slight squeeze at the end, eye contact that lasted a second too long. "Daniel," he said slowly, "I've heard about you." I nodded politely. "I hope only good things." A small chuckle from him. Then came the question, the one that always comes. So, he said, tilting his head slightly, what do you do? Now here's the thing about that question. In rooms like this, it's never just curiosity. It's a ranking system, a quiet scale people use to decide how much attention you deserve. I answered simply, I run a small investment company. He nodded. The kind of nod you give when you've already decided the conversation is over. Ah, he said. That must keep you busy. Then he turned back to Emily and started talking about a major land acquisition they were planning. Just like that, filed away, labeled, unimportant, and honestly. It didn't bother me. I've been in enough rooms to know something most people don't. The loudest person isn't always the most powerful. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one no one is watching. I took a sip of my drink and waited, because nights like this, they always reveal more than people expect. About an hour into the evening, the mood shifted. People had loosened up, ties slightly undone, laughter louder, conversations less careful. Someone near the bar suggested a game. Let's do something fun, a man said. We've got half the smartest real estate minds in the city in one room. Let's test that. A few people cheered, and of course, Mr. Whitmore stepped forward. He didn't rush, he didn't need to. The crowd naturally made space for him. What do you have in mind? He asked. Trivia, someone replied. Business, markets, development history. Nothing too crazy, Whitmore smiled. That confident smile that says he already expects to win. All right, he said. Let's make it interesting. They quickly split the room into teams. Senior executives on one side, younger associates and project managers on the other. Emily ended up on the executive side. I stayed where I was, not really planning to join. But then someone asked, what about the spouses? There was a small pause, and that's when Whitmore looked directly at me. He scanned my suit again, my posture, my quiet stance. Then he smiled. Daniel, he said loudly enough for the nearby group to hear, why don't you join the junior team? Give them a fighting chance. A few people laughed, not cruel laughter, just easy, casual. Like it made sense, like of course I belonged there. I glanced at Emily. Her smile tightened for just a second. Not angry, just protective. I gave her a small nod, it's fine. I walked over to the junior team. They were young. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Sharp minds, but clearly nervous standing across from their boss. One of them, a guy named Leo, leaned toward me and whispered, just so you know they win every year. I smiled. Good, that means they're comfortable. He blinked, not sure what I meant. The host, one of the project directors, stood in the middle with a stack of printed questions. All right, he said. Basic rules, 10 rounds, business, finance, development strategy, market history. No phones, no help. Whitmore crossed his arms confidently. Let's raise the stakes, he added smoothly. The room grew quiet. If my team wins, he continued, Emily's team handles the Henderson account for the next quarter. That got reactions. The Henderson account was big, high profile, stressful. And then he looked at me again. But if the junior team somehow wins, he said with a grin, I'll personally make sure Emily gets a performance bonus this year. The room reacted to that too. People liked the drama. Emily's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected that. I stepped forward just a bit. And if we lose, I asked calmly. Whitmore smirked. If you lose, he said, you'll spend the rest of the evening helping the catering staff. Since you're not technically part of the company. More laughter. Softer this time, more curious. He thought he was being playful, but there was something under it. A reminder of hierarchy, a reminder of who belongs. I held his gaze. Deal, I said simply, no hesitation. For a split second, something flickered in his expression. Maybe surprise, maybe curiosity. Then the game began. The first question was simple. Market trends from 5 years ago. Both teams answered correctly. Second question. Development zoning laws. Both correct again. Third question. A tricky one about a failed waterfront expansion project from nearly a decade back. Whitmore answered quickly, confident, but he missed a key detail. I leaned toward Leo and quietly gave the full answer. Not just what happened, but why it failed. The funding structure. The miscalculated risk exposure. the political pressure that forced early approval. Leo repeated it out loud. The host blinked. That is completely correct. A few heads turned. Whitmore's smile stayed in place, but it tightened slightly. Fourth round. A question about international real estate investment shifts during a currency dip. I answered again. Short, clear, precise. No showing off, just facts. The junior team started looking at me differently now, less like a random spouse, more like an asset. By the sixth round, we were ahead, not by much, but enough. And the room felt different. The casual energy had shifted into something sharper. Whitmore started answering faster, talking louder, correcting his own team mid-sentence. As if volume could fix uncertainty, but knowledge doesn't care about volume. Then came the eighth question. The host read it slowly. In 2016, which private firm quietly acquired majority interest in the failed Harbor Point redevelopment project before restructuring it 2 years later for profit? The room went still. That was a deep question. Most people knew Harbor Point had failed. Few knew who cleaned it up afterward. Whitmore frowned slightly. His team whispered among themselves. No one spoke. On our side, the juniors looked nervous. Leo leaned toward me. Any idea? I took a slow breath. I remembered that deal, very clearly, because I was in the room when it happened. I stepped forward slightly and answered, not just the firm's name, but the subsidiary used to shield the acquisition, the debt structure, the silent partners involved, and the exact profit margin when it was resold. The host stared at the card, then at me. Silence stretched across the room. Finally, he cleared his throat. That is exactly right. No laughter this time, no easy smiles, just quiet. Whitmore looked at me carefully now, not dismissing, not joking, studying. And for the first time that night, he asked a different question. Daniel, he said slowly, where exactly did you say you work? I hadn't, not really. Earlier, I had simply said I ran a small investment company, which is technically true, depending on how you define small. I met his eyes, calm, steady, and I realized something. The room was finally listening. Whitmore was still looking at me, not joking now, not performing, measuring. Where exactly did you say you work? He repeated. The room had gone strangely quiet. Even the music in the background felt softer somehow. I set my glass down on the nearby table. I manage a private investment firm, I said calmly. He nodded once. Yes, you mentioned that. I held his gaze. We focus mostly on distressed urban redevelopment projects. A small pause, the kind that makes people lean in without realizing it. We acquired Harbor Point in 2017. There it was, a shift in the air, not loud, not dramatic, just weight. Whitmore's expression changed in layers, first confusion, then recognition. Then something sharper. Harbor Point was bought through Alder Ridge Holdings, he said slowly. It was, I replied. That's the parent company, he continued. Yes, and Alder Ridge is. I gave him a small, polite smile. My firm. You could almost feel the room recalculating. People who had half turned away were now fully facing us. One of the junior associates actually whispered, Wait, what? Whitmore blinked once, then again. You're Daniel Reed, he asked carefully. I nodded. I am. Now I should explain something. In Emily's world, my name isn't flashy. It doesn't show up on billboards. But in development circles, especially the kind that deal with failing projects, it's known. Not because I chase attention, but because we've turned around some deals people thought were impossible. There were a few trade articles, a panel discussion last year, a financial magazine interview after we closed a large restructuring deal overseas. Nothing dramatic, but enough that someone like Whitmore would recognize it. He just never connected that name to me, to the quiet man by the window, to Emily's husband. His jaw tightened slightly. You were on the restructuring board for the Westbridge collapse, he said. Yes, and the Midtown Rail acquisition. Yes, each answer was calm, simple, no pride in it, just truth. The host looked between us like he had accidentally stepped into something bigger than trivia. Someone near the back muttered, You're kidding. Whitmore let out a short breath through his nose. Not a laugh, more like processing. You passed on our East Harbor proposal in 2019, he said slowly. I nodded once. We did. He tilted his head slightly. Why? It wasn't aggressive. It was genuine now, professional. Timing, I said. The debt exposure was too high for the projected return window. The concept was strong. The risk structure wasn't. Silence, not uncomfortable. Focused, Whitmore studied me for another long second. Then something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not the polished smile from earlier, not the one meant for the room, a real one. Well, he said, voice quieter now, that explains a lot. A few people laughed softly, not at me, with him. The power dynamic had shifted, but it hadn't exploded. It had settled. Like gravity quietly rearranging the room, the host cleared his throat. I believe that brings the junior team ahead by 3 points. There were only 2 questions left. Whitmore glanced at the board, then back at me. You've been holding back all night, he said. I shrugged slightly. No one asked. A small ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. But it felt different now, respectful. The next question came. Complicated tax structuring for mixed-use developments. Whitmore answered first. Correctly, so did we. Final question. A scenario-based risk evaluation. This one wasn't about memory. It was about instinct. The kind of decision you make when millions are on the line. Whitmore gave his answer confidently. Then it was our turn. Leo looked at me, I looked at him. What do you think? I asked quietly. He blinked. Me? Yes. He hesitated, then spoke. Carefully, walking through the logic step by step. It wasn't perfect, but it was thoughtful. When he finished, I added just one adjustment. A small shift in capital allocation, nothing dramatic, just enough. The host read the official answer. And nodded, that's it, that's exactly it. Game over. The junior team had won, not by luck, not by accident, but clearly. There was applause, real applause. Whitmore walked toward me slowly. Not rushed, not embarrassed, thoughtful. He extended his hand again. This time, no extra squeeze, no dominance, just respect. Seems I owe your wife a bonus, he said. Double, I reminded him gently. He huffed a quiet laugh. Double, he confirmed. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only I could hear. You could have said something earlier. I could have, I agreed. Why didn't you? I glanced across the room. Emily was standing there, watching, eyes wide, half proud, half overwhelmed. She never needed my name to stand in this room, I said quietly. She earned her place. Whitmore followed my gaze, then nodded once, slowly. I misjudged you, he said. It happens, I replied, and I meant it, because it does. People see what they expect to see. Most of the time, they never look deeper. But sometimes, they're forced to. After the applause faded, the room didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. Something had changed. People who hadn't noticed me before were suddenly very aware of where I was standing. A few executives came over to shake my hand. One asked for a business card. Another made a comment about possibly reconnecting sometime. I kept it polite. Short answers, light smiles, nothing more, because none of that was the point. Emily finally made her way over to me. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, like she was trying to match 2 versions of the same person. You never told me, she said quietly. Her voice wasn't accusing. It was confused, a little emotional. I did tell you, I said gently. I said I run an investment firm. She let out a soft breath. You didn't tell me you were you. I smiled slightly. I'm still just me. For a second, her eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears, not even happy ones exactly. More like the kind that come when something clicks into place. I've been trying so hard to prove myself here, she said. All these years, I wanted them to respect me on my own. And they do, I said. She shook her head. But tonight, you could have walked in and changed everything instantly. You could have made it about you. It was never about me, I replied, and that was the truth. Across the room, Whitmore was speaking quietly with a few board members. He glanced over once. Not with ego, not with challenge, just acknowledgement, professional recognition. Emily looked back at him, then at me. You passed on their East Harbor deal, she said softly. If you had invested, that project would have made my career. I nodded once. It also could have sunk your company if the market shifted the way we predicted. She stared at me. You knew that. Yes. And you didn't tell me. It wasn't my place, I said. You needed to build your path without leaning on mine. The music had shifted to something slower now. Softer. Most of the guests were moving toward dessert tables or final drinks. Conversations were quieter, more thoughtful. Emily reached for my hand. Come outside with me, she said. We stepped out onto the terrace. Cold air hit us immediately. The city lights stretched out below like a field of stars. Cars moving, buildings glowing, life continuing like it always does. For a minute, we just stood there, no talking, just breathing. Finally, she leaned into me. You know what the crazy part is, she said. What? I was nervous bringing you tonight. I laughed softly. Why? Because I didn't want them to judge you. That made me smile. They did judge me, I said calmly. She pulled back slightly. Doesn't that bother you? No, not even a little. I looked out over the city. I've learned something over the years, I said. When people underestimate you, they show you who they are. When they respect you without knowing your status, they show you who they are too. She was quiet, listening carefully. I don't need every room to know my name, I continued. I just need the right people to know my character. Her fingers tightened slightly around mine. You always do that, she said. Do what? Stay quiet, let things unfold. Like you're never in a rush to prove anything, I shrugged gently. When you know what you've built, you don't need applause, I said. You just need peace. She rested her head against my shoulder. And in that moment, standing there in the cold air,